I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dreams some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings we
Well, hopefully we are online. Once again, some technical difficulties have plagued our program. Welcome to Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. I hope we are live. I'll find out from our producer momentarily if we are. I sure hope we are. Welcome to Character Matters. As I said before, I'm Dr. George Simon. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face, and that affects so many areas of our daily lives, from our individual relationships to our community relationships, to our business enterprises, to our politics, to the workings of our government. Every aspect of our lives is touched by the character crisis, and this is what we talk about on the program. So if you want to join the conversation, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, and I'll be happy to take your call. We're going to be talking once again tonight on the program about some of the 10 commandments of character that I've been posting on my blog site at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulativepeople.com. I have hundreds of timely articles there on every single topic related to character disturbance that you can think of. Articles on narcissism, articles on psychopathy, articles on sociopathy, articles on covert aggressive and manipulative personalities, articles on borderline personalities, all the difficult personalities that you're likely to encounter in your life and the trouble that they might cause you in your relationships. Plenty of articles, not just explaining the phenomenon, but helping you to understand how to get through these kinds of relationships, what to do to cope better, and also what to look for in the way of help. So many people will report to me on a weekly basis that it was trauma enough for them to find themselves in a relationship with a manipulative or a character disturbed individual of some type. Some of these folks are really good at the charm offensives that they mount at the beginning of relationships, and they can indeed pull the wool over your eyes. They can fool you as to what they're really all about in character. And as I say in my book, In Sheep's Clothing, is kind of like getting whiplash. You know what's hit you pretty much after the damage has already been done. It takes, unfortunately, a few years sometimes for these folks to reveal their true character, to show their true colors. And by that time, folks in relationships with them have invested a considerable degree. They've invested time, they've invested money, they've put their emotional energy into the relationship, into their families many times, into their children. They have literally invested hundreds of hours of sweat and toil to make things work. And when they finally realize the true character of the person they've been dealing with and how almost impossible it is to deal with the situation in the traditional ways that we have been taught to deal with the situation, it's really unnerving. It's really depression fostering. And so that's why I wrote another book. In addition to my landmark book, still by far the number one international bestseller on the topic in many, many foreign languages, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People. In addition to that book, and my follow-up bestseller, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, that talks about all the various character disturbed individuals you're likely to encounter, what they're really like, how they really operate, how you need to deal with them, and especially, most especially, what to look for in the way of getting the right kind of help, because we don't want folks experiencing what we call therapy-induced trauma, where they went to get help, and not only didn't they get the help they wanted, but many times they felt further victimized by the process itself, because maybe they were even successfully demonized during the process. Or maybe the manipulative or charming narcissist or psychopath pulled the wool over the therapist's eyes, went on the charm offensive and succeeded. And that can be a really disheartening experience. And I can't tell you how many times I've had this year, I'll be continuing to do training workshops across the country. You can find the information about that either on my website at manipulative-people.com, my blog site. You can find information there, or you can go to the Vine Education, VYNE, at www.vyne.com or crosscountryeducation.com, which has been bought by Vine. And you can find my schedule there by searching for live seminars under my name, and you'll find out where I'm speaking. And next week I'll be going to Bakersfield, then to Fresno, and then to San Jose. I'll be in Bakersfield on Wednesday, then Fresno the following Thursday, and then Friday I will be in San Jose. So anxious to make that trip. I'll be visiting with some family and friends in Bakersfield when I arrive there, so I'm looking forward to that. But In addition to providing the training that so many professionals so desperately need in working with these kinds of individuals, I am surprised by the number of lay folks who show up at these workshops, and time and time again, a fair proportion of these folks want to be heard on an issue, and they will say something unprompted at the workshop that means so much more coming from them than it actually would mean coming from me. And that is, they relate the experience of therapy-induced trauma. They talk about what it felt like to be seeking nothing but help and healing, and then feeling victimized by the process because the therapist, the service provider, just didn't seem to get it. Sometimes they didn't even see the subtle manipulations and tactics that the person was using. So when the relationship partner, the victimized relationship partner, is actually in the therapy room with the therapist and says, see, this is what she or this is what he does, and the therapist still doesn't see it, or reframes it or interprets it entirely differently in a way that misses the mark, this can be really disconcerting for somebody who's gone for help. And so folks attending my workshops, lay persons who have come, will inevitably say this, and they'll stress how important it is for the therapist to get it. I don't know, perhaps one of you out there listening tonight has had an experience just like that. Maybe you want to talk about it. Maybe you have another question you want to ask. In any case, I'm more than happy to take your call. All you have to do is give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, and I'll be more than happy to put you on the air. I know we've had a lot of technical difficulty with our phone calling in the past, and one of the reasons possibly for that had to do with an upgrade to the program that we use to bring you this broadcast. But I have since not only updated the operating system on my computer, but I have upgraded all sorts of features to make sure and run a compatibility check that if there is still a problem, it's not due to any incompatibility with the software side of our system. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and if someone wants to venture out and give me a call, has something they want to discuss, question they want to ask, I'm happy to entertain it at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, in addition to the articles that I've been posting on the 10 Commandments of Character, and in addition to my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, and my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, and my book, The Judas Syndrome, and my book for the relationship partner that is trying to survive and thrive in this character-disordered world, trying to figure out what the heck happened and what they can do to ensure that it never happened again, that they never again have to experience a relationship so toxic. How Did We End Up Here is the name of that book. My co-author, Kathy Armistead, and I meant that for just that aggrieved relationship partner. But in addition to all that, come the spring, I will be introducing what will probably be my last book, my fifth and probably last book, tentatively titled The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. And it is It is an expansion, a great expansion on a topic that I devoted some brief time to in my book, Character Disturbance. Namely, that unlike years ago, where we could safely assume that trauma, bad circumstances, perhaps abuse or neglect, something bad, we could assume that that lied at the root of someone's character development arrests. In other words, it would have turned out all right if it weren't for some really stinking things happening. But we can't safely assume that anymore. The problem of character disturbance is more insidious than that. It's not always what happens to a person that stunts their growth, that arrests their character development. Many times, the greater culprit is what doesn't happen in the way of good modeling, good rearing, good instructing, good discipline, good guidance. In the absence of that, we human beings who are at the core animals, in the absence of adequate civilizing influences, we will behave like animals. And on top of that, if you have someone who is extra predisposed constitutionally to be kind of a more stubborn, tenacious, difficult to tame individual, if you have such a person, especially in this culture of entitlement, glorification of the individual, self-justification, egomania, if you have a person there who has not had the proper guidance, has those predispositions, and then grows up in a culture of narcissism, the culture that we have today, the culture of rampant moral relativism, the culture of massive entitlement. You have a person like that growing up in that kind of an environment with those kinds of predispositions and that lack of good learning and civilization, and it's a recipe for disaster. It's a true recipe for disaster. It means that the person is going to be arrested in their character development. They're not going to learn the civilized ways to conduct themselves and to cope with life's trials and circumstances. Life is trying. It has challenges built into it. We have to be able to meet those challenges. And the 10th commandment that I talked about in my post last Friday is about the imperative that we treat others with civility and with generosity. And that does not mean, as I said in the article, which you can find, of course, at manipulativepeople.com, that's manipulative-people.com, I made the point that that does not mean treating people in the manner that you would have them treat you, does not mean that you tolerate abuse, or that you tolerate demeaning behavior, or that you tolerate any other kind of boundary violation or limit crossing. You're not obliged to do that. As a matter of fact, you're obliged to take good care of yourself. That's what you're obliged to do. But there are ways, even with some of the disturbed characters, to confront issues and to draw lines firmly in the sand and to stand on principles and expect certain behaviors. There are ways to do that unreservedly but still civilly and with a generous heart. Especially a generous heart toward yourself. So there is no incompatibility with the axiom that I write about this Friday and the need to protect yourself from the really no-goodniks out there. You know, I talk about in my books all the time, I talk about how character disturbance exists along a spectrum. We have realized this big time with the autistic disorders, that so many disturbances, so many mental disorders and conditions that we once thought we could fit into nice, tight, neat little categories, mutually exclusive categories. So many of these conditions really exist along a spectrum. And character disturbance is one of those phenomena that is a spectrum phenomenon. It exists along a continuum, not just a continuum of degree, but of quality. So you can have individuals who are to some degree character disturbed, but they don't qualify as having the severity of character disturbance, the inflexibility of character, the maladaptivity of character to qualify for a narcissistic personality disorder diagnosis or any other kind of personality or character disorder diagnosis. So there are folks along the spectrum. And because character disturbance is a spectrum phenomenon also of quality, people can have various different personality traits contributing to their personality dysfunction, contributing to their character problems. And so you can have a person, for example, who has some narcissistic traits, has some antisocial traits, maybe even has a penchant for high drama, has those traits in their personality too. And then, of course, you can have a person who has such a poor sense of self that they got just about every trait you can imagine, just about every undesirable trait you can imagine in them, which makes them hard to figure out, makes them very hard to predict, especially with regard to their behavior, especially with regard to their emotions. So we now know that this is a spectrum phenomenon. And I hate to say this, but it's a product of our time. There are so many folks that are on the spectrum somewhere these days. It's just frightening. Right now, we're having some real turmoil in our country because of the persona that we see in the president-elect of the United States, Donald Trump. And some people ask, is he aware? He can't possibly be aware. Well, I can remember I have an archive of videos, and I can remember that one of the archives that I have, one of the archives stands out in my mind. It's Donald Trump, President-elect Trump, at a couple of different rallies, telling the audience how aware he was about what people saw in him and in his personality that they didn't like. So as I tell my folks, as I tell the professionals in my workshops, it's not so much that they're not aware. The problem is they don't really care. It's not so much that they are not aware. They not only know what they do, and they not only know who they are, but they like what they do, and they like who they are. They feel perfectly entitled to keep on doing exactly as they do, even though their behavior might hurt other people, might be seen as insensitive by most folks. They don't care. And when they have a lot of power and a lot of money, they have very, very little incentive to ever care. It's just a really, really sad thing. And so I watched the news conference, the press conference, excuse me. And I really left the encounter on the verge of despair. You know, I thought I'll give this a chance. I'll give this a chance. On the trail several times, even during the primary season, I remember Mr. Trump saying repeatedly, when the time comes to be presidential, I'll be presidential. As a matter of fact, I'll be more presidential than anybody. You can almost predict a statement like that from him. And I've been waiting, but I'm not holding my breath. And it is absolutely not that they can't turn it off. It's that they won't, because they not only like how they operate, they also like who they are. And it's not that they're not aware. It's that they don't care. So the United States of America, which I love dearly, as you know from tuning into this program, where every single week at the beginning and the end, we close with that patriotic piece that plays, that my wife and I wrote, America, My Home. And by the way, I've got a story to tell you about that. The person who recorded the song has actually been trying to get a foot in the door to perform it at the inauguration. And I've got some very, very strong feelings about that. So, but I mean, he has not been successful, which is very interesting because it seems like there are almost no headliners yet left who are willing to put their who are willing to put their professional reputations on the line. But in any case, I may have more to say about that later, especially if, for some reason, there is actually a chance that the song gets performed. I'll have much more to say. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about narcissism. I also want to talk about the 10 Commandments of character development. But if you have something you'd like to share, a question you'd like to ask, a situation you'd like to work through on the air, just give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And I'll be happy to take your call. I notice now that we have in our UCY.TV lineup an excellent program before this one. And I also noticed this evening as I was preparing for tonight's broadcast that the program focuses on the important concerns, the important social and political concerns of our time. I'm really happy about that because the need for a national discussion of the important issues could never be greater. And the need for a civil discourse about those issues could never be greater, which is why I want to acquaint you with this 10th commandment that I've been writing about the importance of civility and generosity to character development. You know, we live in an age of massive entitlement. I mean, I hardly know where to begin. Most people have absolutely no idea, no appreciation for how all the comforts that we enjoy and take for granted on a daily basis even came to be. In other words, most folks don't have a really deep level, solid understanding of what it took to get us here, to this place and time, with all that we have. Most folks have absolutely no concept. They just figure that they get up in the morning and flip on the TV and they're entertained. They just come to expect that they pop something in the microwave oven and a minute and a half later it's ready to eat. They just come to expect that any variety of anything they want, they can pick up at a store at a price that most people can readily afford, even those living at or around the poverty line. I am not saying that we should be satisfied with the way things are, even for folks who would be rightly classified poor. And I'm also not saying at all that there should be any reason why in this great, powerful, and very, very rich country, why there should be any poverty. But the American way of life and the American standard of living is quite an amazing accomplishment when you look at history. And I'm not necessarily saying that we have the best. As a matter of fact, we used to have the best in several areas. We don't anymore. There are a lot of other countries, especially countries who for various reasons having to do with the lack of the same kinds of necessities, but for various reasons do not pour so much money into military activities and defense. So they've got much more money left over for other things, for the care of their people. So I don't know whether you agree or not, but we have an awful lot to be grateful for. And I make the point in character disturbance when I talk about this commandment, and I be making the point in giving examples, example after example in the upcoming book. Even though we are in this age of entitlement, the truth is, the eternal, unquestionable truth is, that we are not owed a thing in this life. Even life itself is a gift. It is an unearned gift. You could consider it a gift of nature, if you will, a pure accident of nature. We didn't ask that our parents come together and create any of us. None of us asked for that. That was done. And that our parents didn't ask for the urges and drives that brought them together. Nature wired that in. But we also are not entitled to it. It's a precious, precious gift, this life of ours is. So precious that we have to allow ourselves to be open to the great debt that we owe. Humble gratitude is what brings about the willingness to be civil and generous. And our age of entitlement, unfortunately, doesn't promote that. It promotes a kind of me first, I'll get what I want, sometimes at any cost, or sometimes at some very, very steep costs, just so long as I succeed in getting what I want, and regardless of who might get hurt in the process, or who might be left behind in the process, who I might just passively disregard in my own relentless quest for my own safety, security, my own wealth, my own ambition, my own power. This is what we do in the age of entitlement. This is what we do in the age of entitlement. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse. It's getting so much worse. But what I see happening on the horizon is I see that we have reached a new level of low. A really disturbing one. Even those folks who were strongly supportive at one time are witnessing some things that they cannot stomach in those who would lead them, one in particular. There are some personality styles. That's what really defines personality. It's a style of relating that arises out of certain core beliefs and attitudes about how to deal with the world around you, and certain predispositions to behave in certain ways. That interactive style that a person develops and keeps pretty much for most of their adult life and across a wide variety of situations. That's what defines personality. And what defines character is the moral side of that. That aspect of a person's personality that reflects their degree of social conscientiousness, their personal ethics, their level of integrity, their internalized moral compass, if they have one, God willing, God hoping. And that's what defines character. Ours is the age of rampant character disturbance precisely because we're living in the age of unprecedented narcissism. We can't keep sending these messages to our children and expect anything different as a result. We have to think differently. We have to contemplate seriously what we've been doing, glorifying individuals, heaping praise on those with talent, who haven't demonstrated the character that we would expect of someone commensurate with their level of talent, maybe education, maybe even accomplishment. How do you reward to the tune of millions of dollars a year someone who spits basically in the face of every major rule for basic human decency? How do you do that? But we do it all the time, especially in Hollywood, especially in pro sports, in other activities. We don't demand character anymore, which is one of the biggest reasons we don't have so much of it anymore. Imagine what could possibly be the case if we started to insist on it again. Let's say that we were so insistent. Let's say that we were so insistent that until and unless and upon a very careful review, a person's solidity of character wasn't clearly obvious, and that we didn't have to worry about a thing about them. Let's just say that we expected that before we heap money and praise and attention on somebody. Let's just say that we made that a core prerequisite for getting on any major pro sports team. What would happen is we wouldn't have as many of the likely we wouldn't have as we likely wouldn't have as many of the truly gifted folks who unfortunately didn't have the character they really needed to have. I'm not saying that there aren't plenty of gifted folks who have plenty of character. I'm just saying that if we made character a really, really important and exclusionary criteria, if we made it that important, the ranks would dwindle in some of these enterprises. Some of these enterprises overrun by character disturbance. And if relationship partners cared about themselves enough to carefully vet and to hold accountable and to adequately judge the character of another, likely, it's very, very likely that relationships would hold together better. That we wouldn't have the epidemic of relationship problems that we have these days. It's just so sad to me. I was talking with someone earlier today. I was talking about growing up. You know, my father, my parents, ended up doing relatively well for themselves in this great land, but it wasn't always so. And because I'm the oldest in our family, in my very early years, we were kind of poor. We always had food on the table. My dad saw to that. But we were by no means even close to approaching lower middle class to start with, not to start with. There's a lot of sweat involved there, a lot of determination, a lot of hard work, A lot of sacrifice, tons of sacrifice. And we lived in the smallest square footage home in the entire city. A tiny little doll house, they called it. Just unbelievable. But we were happy and safe. And our neighborhood, even our extended neighborhood, was happy and safe. And as youngsters, we could go and walk together to the park and play, and maybe even play all day. And our parents didn't have to worry, and they would not be charged with child endangerment or neglect. And it was so rare. It's so rare in those days to even hear of marriages breaking up, of relationships falling apart. Families stayed together. They were the cradle for character development in children. My, have the times changed. How they have changed. And how they have changed, more than anything else, has to do with changes in culture, especially the culture of entitlement. It's enemy number one. It's public enemy number one, relationship enemy number one, and it's even turned into political enemy number one. You see, what should bother folks more than some of the antics of our president-elect, this is a no prisoners taking, hard fighting. You're really nice to me. You don't criticize me. You don't challenge me. You don't do anything I consider rude or demeaning to me, and I'll kind of leave you alone. But you challenge me, if I don't like it, if I think you're casting aspersions on me, I'm going to attack you. And it's not the attack that should bother us so much. It is the feeling of entitlement to do it that should bother us. It should unnerve us to the core. And we asked for that by allowing this culture of narcissism to develop, this culture of entitlement. Nothing is earned anymore. People grow up in that type of environment, and therefore they don't grow up in character. They don't learn the core important lessons that they need to learn in order to function as mature and responsible characters. It's a sad day. It's a very sad day. I have the fondest memories of my childhood, growing up in an industrial city that now looks like a bomb hit it. It looks just like a bomb hit it. And it breaks my heart. And there's been all kinds of reasons offered for why it is now so unsafe. Those images of kids just trotting along to the park to play ball, maybe 5, 10, maybe 15, 20 city blocks to get there to the nearest park with their friends. Parents not worrying about a thing. Be back before dark. Have a good time. Kids responsible enough to call an adult, any adult, find an adult, any adult if there was trouble. And any adult being trustworthy enough. Who are your parents? Where do you live? Call the police if necessary. Make a phone call. Take care of things. Where any adult could be trusted. Oh my. It breaks the heart and pierces the soul to witness what has happened. At least it breaks my heart. And so much of it is due to the culture of entitlement. So as I watched that news conference the other day, and I watched our president-elect really give it to one of the reporters, flexing that muscle of power. And by the way, that's another story right there. I'll address that in just a minute. Flexing that power in a way that says, I'm running this show here. I set the rules. I call the shots. I can end it at any minute. Step in line or shut up. That's basically what he was saying. And that's what we're going to have, folks. And it's not, I repeat, it's not that he's not aware. It's that he doesn't care. He feels perfectly justified. He likes that MO, that modus operandi, that way of dealing with things. As a matter of fact, he taught his children the same thing. They actually revere that. They have said so. You go out swinging. Somebody challenges you, you let them know who's boss. And unfortunately, in our culture, the way our social fabric has come to evolve, such personality and character styles have become adaptive. People get rich and famous displaying them. Now, I got to tell you, I certainly don't mind folks calling attention. I certainly don't mind anybody calling attention to this problem. We need far more people to call attention to it. So when at the Golden Globes, Meryl Streep called out our president-elect, I didn't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with, however, is the fact that this problem of narcissism is widespread, and there's no shortage of it. There was no shortage of it in that jam-packed little theater there where they were presenting the awards. No shortage of it among those Hollywood attendees. The difference is the expression of it. There are many different forms. Narcissism takes many different forms, and some of the forms are pretty ugly, especially the really crude ones. And we have, for our president-elect, someone who takes no prisoners and makes no bones about it, and who doesn't care. As a matter of fact, he will not care even if he loses the level of support that he has enjoyed by rallying up folks at popular rallies. He's not going to be dissuaded by that. I'll predict that to you right now. That doesn't make any difference. Individuals like this are driven by two agendas. They want to win, and that means having a position of power, dominance, and control. And then secondly, they want to look great doing it. They want to have it all, and they want to be revered by all. Or at least feared by all. And in that way, in their minds, respected to a certain degree, although it certainly isn't the kind of respect that most of us would consider healthy respect. They only want to be recognized as a force to be contended with. In other words, you mess with me, you're going down. And unfortunately, in our dog-eat-dog, every man for himself or every woman for herself, competitive business climate, that's not a bad strategy to have. It's just bad ethically and morally. At least it is in my mind. That's why I do this program. That's why I write my books and articles. That's why I have the blog at www.manipulative-people.com. That's why there is In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Time, the Judas Syndrome, for those in the Christian faith community who know in their heart that it's a faith not professed on the lips, but a faith lived out that can truly save. And finally, my book, How Did We End Up Here, with Kathy Armistead, that gives the toxic relationship survivor a compass by which to navigate through this crazy, character-disturbed world of ours. And so I'll keep on writing, and I'll keep on speaking at workshops. I'll be in California next week. I'll be in Bakersfield Wednesday, Fresno on Thursday, and San Jose on Friday. I hope the sun is shining for me. And then I'll be in the St. Louis area. Following that, I'll have more details for you about that next week. So I'll keep on doing these things, and then I will keep on trying to reach you on this program. And my purpose is to play a small role in converting one heart at a time, because that's how we're going to navigate our way through this character crisis that's been going on for all too many decades now. The world is too dangerous a place. There are too many bad actors out there, and we have it within our means to do massive destruction. Massive, massive destruction. So I'll keep doing my part. I hope you'll also do your part. And one of the biggest ways you can do that is by recommending my work. So go to the blog, read the articles. If you find an article that speaks to you or that you think might speak to somebody else, pass it along. If you've gotten one of my books, please recommend it to others. And hopefully we'll tune in again next week on Character Matters for another edition. And I thank you for